you are falling prey to this thing that so many saints are falling prey to, I call it the clock. As you start getting older, you're like, wait a minute now, God showed me this when I was 17, and here it is, I'm 37. Okay, God, it's been 20 years. You're trying to manage what God dropped on the inside of you. I'm not trying to be funny or be harsh. Everybody go through it. You're like, Lord, why you show me this? And here it is, 30 years have passed and ain't nothing happened. Look like I've been moving in the opposite direction. God didn't tell you this is the way it's going to go. He said, this is what I call you to do. He shows you the future, walk you up to it, or transport you to it. You look it in the face, and you're like, yes. He said, now come on. He transports you back to the starting line, and your life goes that way. What you saw is that way, you think. God takes you over the river and through the woods. And you ain't going to grandma's house. You go through all of this stuff, and it's like you finally come to a place where, Lord, I surrender. I ain't trying to figure out nothing else. Whatever you want to do, you do. Adjust me. Adjust my attitude. Fix what's wrong in me. And you hand yourself over to him way out there in the woods. After you done hit several trees, after big limbs have fallen on you, after the wolves chased you, after a bear grabbed you and took a plug out of you, after the leopard scratched you all up, after you ran and didn't have any sleep for 6 days straight, after you came to the end of yourself. And then right where the rocks fell on you and where the trees collapsed and where all the bears and the lions and the tigers and the oh my's happened to you, you threw your hands up, and then God turned that place into the place that he showed you your purpose. It happened in the woods, but it didn't manifest until you surrendered yourself over to it. Because you couldn't pull it off yourself, no way. He was doing it. Yeah. That was for somebody. Stop crying along the journey. Hallelujah. Woo. Look at this. Verse 7 says, pour out all your worries and stress upon him and leave them there. Pour it out, and then he tells you to leave. Pour it out. Leave it there. If you leave it there, it ain't going with you when you walk away. Some of you are carrying too much stuff, and you don't know that the enemy has suckered you into a place where he can make you a POW because you're hanging on to the stress. De-stress. That's what he's saying. Get rid of the stress. Get rid of the worries. I had something pressing against me one time. And it was pressing. And went to bed, and this stuff is still on my mind. I feel it sitting in my chest. And the Lord asked me a question. He said, are you going to stay up? Yes, sir. And I remember, the scripture said God neither sleeps nor slumbers. Are you going to stay up fooling with this? I said, wait a minute. I was so wrapped up in my thoughts, I didn't even know where I was. You know when somebody's all messed up in the head and you got a whole lot on your mind, you could be going and doing things and your autopilot is taking you through that. You ain't seen nobody. You don't even know where. You don't remember leaving the house and driving to the store. You look up, you standing on aisle 6. In the store, you don't remember pulling up on the parking lot. Your mind is all wrapped up with this thing. He said, are you going to stay up? Wait a minute. You neither sleep nor slumber. Ain't no point in both of us staying up. I'm going to sleep. Cast the care on him. I cast it on him and went to sleep. I'm talking about real sleep. I'm talking about the sleep where you crook your head to the side and you let your tongue hang out and you go, look at your neighbor and say, get some real sleep. Some of y'all need to snore. Man, here carrying all this stuff. So he says, pour all your worries out and your stresses upon him and leave them there, for he always tenderly cares for you. Be well balanced and alert. Well balanced and alert. We're not alert. We're not watchful. We let any and everything in our ear gate, our eye gate. We let anybody in our life. Folks that quote scriptures, you think they spiritual. The devil quotes the scriptures and twists them. There are people who are in rebellion and you're innocent. And they want to latch on to you. You're innocently pursuing the Lord, but they want to latch on to you and they'll siphon off of you. The purity of your heart causes God to draw people that you might minister to them, but they want to hook up with you because their heart's not pure and ain't nobody being drawn to them. So they want to appear spiritual. You better ask the Lord to give you discernment and give you grace to handle those that God has said no to. He said you got to be well balanced. Don't be so spiritual that you can't pay your bills. Don't be so spiritual that you can't be kind to folks. Don't be so spiritual that you can't open the door for your wife. Don't be so spiritual that you can't cook for your husband. Don't be so spiritual that you have no balance. And God is the one, the Spirit of God is the one that will strike the balance in your life. He will show you this is the balance. And the balance of God, his scales does not entertain or embrace any injustice. That was too much for y'all, wasn't it? See, we want to point out how the devil goes about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And so we're looking for a roaring lion that's seeking whom he may devour. You ain't seen no lion. Since you hadn't seen one, you ain't been concerned about the devil. Not understanding the tactics. When you're not balanced, you're falling prey. That's the roaring lion. Your life has no balance. Who said you got to go to everything that's been put on? What if the Spirit of God tell you to sit tight? Yeah. There are saints that take their money and sow it into places and people that God didn't tell you to do it. You just felt like that was it because they made a presentation. Oh, now that's God right there. Who said that was God? Even if it was God, you got to still ask him, where do you want me to sow? I sold some money into somebody one time, and then while I was in prayer, the Spirit of God said, you're not getting anything for that. Yeah, he know how to get your attention. My hard-earned money, I sold into them. And, I'm thinking, I should have known. There's something about them. They crooks. They this and that. It wasn't that they were crooks. He didn't tell me to sow there. He said, so you're not getting anything for that. And I was like, well, how come? Why come? Oh, you know how it is when you think you've been done wrong, you'll bow up at the Lord. Wait a minute, Lord. Why come? Because I didn't tell you to sow it. He said, from now on, only sow where I tell you to sow. You ain't clapping for me. Lord have mercy. Are y'all getting this? Say, be well balanced and always alert. Because your enemy, the devil, roams about incessantly like a roaring lion looking for its prey to devour. Take a decisive stand against him and resist his every attack. To resist means you're going to take up your battle position against him. What is your battle position? I'm asking you, what's your battle position? Then how do you know to take it up? This is what you gotta go to the Spirit of God and say, Lord, show me, what is my battle position? What does that look like? He'll begin to show you. That's why personal prayer is so important. Is your communing with him. Are y'all listening to me? See, we're trying to figure out how come stuff ain't working. As an infant or a baby, an immature person in the things of God, there are some things that you can get away with. But it's only for a moment. Y'all know how it is with little kids, little toddlers. They do things. They're innocent. They don't know. Oh, but when they turn 18 and they doing that, we're going to have to break that in you. Yeah. You know how it is. Teenagers, they got all the answers and they ain't got no money. They know how you ought to run the house that accommodates them. They ain't paid not nan bill. Everybody say nan bill. Well, you can talk all day long. But like my mama used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you. And once they show you, it don't take another one. They cook and you bust up to the table, the first one. And they said, only those that work get to eat. You don't want no job. So you can't eat. But I'm used to eating. I know. Now you're going to see what it's like to not be able to eat. Food costs money. Y'all know how it is. It don't take but one time. You be out there cutting grass and raking leaves and cleaning gut. Oh, yeah. Wow. Let me do this. The devil wants to make the people of God, POWs, and then you gotta know that there are two battle fronts. Say two battle fronts. One is a battle front that's within you. Yeah, the Lord will take you to both of these battle fronts. But the first place he's going to take you to, and I'm talking about the enemy is out to take you out. But the Lord you're born for battle. But it's two fronts. One is inside, one is outside. Now, here's Genesis 32. Y'all pull that up for me. Genesis 32. And we'll pick up at verse 22. But this first battlefront is within us. And its purpose is to unlock our true identity. If God can't unlock your true identity, you will lose on the battlefront that's outside of you. You will always lose. There are a lot of people, I've been fighting the devil. Come on now. But the problem is, they really don't know who they are. So how can you fight effectively and you don't know who you are? This is the toughest battlefront, the one that's within. Because the battle within, the Lord will make you face you. The you that you have portrayed and the you that you really are. Let me look at this, then I'll be out of your way. I know some of y'all like, I wish he gone, leave that alone. You don't tell me what to do. Look at your neighbor and say, you don't scare him. This I want to read this to you. This is about Jacob. This is after he left his uncle Laban. Y'all know the story about Jacob and his uncle Laban. Jacob comes from a long line of hustlers, con men. That was Jacob's name, bamboozler. He steals from you while you're looking at him. He in covenant with God, but he's a bamboozler. He's like, what? Don't look at me like that. Y'all know how saints are. We go to church and we cuss. We go to church and we steal. We smile while we put the wrong figures down. We was reading our Bible in our cubicle while we was putting the Post-it notes in our purse. I can't hear nobody. So don't be hard on Jacob. And so Jacob is on the way back home, back to where he was born, but he's scared because he's got to run into his brother Esau that he bamboozled the birthright out of. Yeah. Saints don't like to go back to where the crime scene is. We want the Lord to move us on to other places. But God has this way of making you come back to the scene of the crime and deal with what has to be dealt with. I don't want to deal with this because that's why I left. Oh my goodness. But his assignment is where the crime scene is. Jesus. Look at your neighbor and say, you're going to have to face up. And so Jacob comes and he's come up with these strategies to try to appease his brother and all that stuff. And here it says, and he arose that night and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed over the ford of Jabbok. Jabbok actually means to unload, to depopulate, and to empty. A ford means a crossing place. So God brought him to a place where he had to cross over and empty himself. This battle on the inside, God's going to bring you to a place where you're going to have to put it all on the table. You're going to have to empty yourself. Y'all done got quiet now. Look at verse 23. He took them, sent them over the brook, and sent over what he had. Then Jacob was left alone, empty and alone. A lot of times when you find yourself in a place, you feel empty. I'm not talking about this spiritual drought. You ain't been in the Word. You ain't been pursuing the Lord. But it's like you're at this place, and it's like God demands that you hand over everything. And you're faced with, what if I don't preach again? Will I still serve him? What if he asks for all the songs? You don't sing again. You can't preach again. Nobody will see you. I want you to live in the shadows. Come on. Would you have a problem with the Lord? Would you walk away from him? I ain't playing with you no more. You don't play fair. Like the Lord told me one time, he said, I want you to help this man of God. Well, what about what you gave me? He said, give it back to me. Well, what did you give it to me for? Why? Are you an Indian giver? Don't look at me like that. Are you an Indian giver? He said, give it back to me. Why did you give it to me? He said, who does it belong to? I said, it belongs to you. He said, well, can I not ask for it back? I've never heard of anything like that. He said, just because you hadn't heard of it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. He said, what if I want you to be the first to experience this? And it's like, oh God, this is, and he was left alone. I don't care how you try to load your life up with people. God's going to work your life to the point where you are left alone with him. And watch this. Verse 24, then Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. That'll preach by itself. A man, capital M, wrestled with him. The same man that wrestled. The word wrestle in the Hebrew, the Hebrew language is a language of pictures. So picture this. Dust flying all over the place. You can't even hardly see the ones that's wrestling. Jacob didn't wrestle with this man. This man, one translation said he suddenly showed up and started wrestling with, throwing Jacob around in the dust. A cloud of dust, and Jacob couldn't see who was coming at him out of the shadows. All he knew was somebody got a hold of me. And he's trying to fight back with everything he got. Because Jacob lived in the dust. When you're sneaky, conniving, trifling, you're a crook, you be lying, you in the dust. So he met him and dusted him. Your life won't go any further until this man wrestles with you. Everybody say, this man. You go and read about Joshua. Joshua, bad as he is, had to meet this man. When this man came, everything changed. When this man grabs hold of you, he has the power to shut your life down or release you into something. That's what we've been afraid of. We want to put on the whole armor of God, but we haven't encountered this man. This man deals with what's on the inside, so you can win that battle. Because when Jacob won that battle, he could face his brother. Up to then, he was functioning in fear and pulling out all his old tricks, trying to con his brother. Are y'all listening to me? Yes. Verse 25, when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint, and he wrestled with him. He's hurting, and the man's still wrestling with him. God don't care about you. You're going to holler in this one. I can't sugarcoat it. You will holler in this encounter. You will holler when your hip is out of joint. He didn't have no Advil or Tylenol, none of that stuff. No, take 3 of them, and it'll take the edge off the pain. No. This is straight pain, and the Lord inflicted it on him. He took his hip out of joint. Pain like you never imagined. And he said, let me go, for the day breaks. I love this because back in verse 24, he said he wrestled with him until the breaking of day. The breaking of day means this, folks, a brand new pattern and an opportunity. God wrestled with him until he brought him to a place of a brand new pattern and new opportunities. He'll break the old patterns in your life. In verse 27, so he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, con man, bamboozler, for you have struggled with God and with man and have prevailed. Your name is Israel. The reason the first battlefront is within, because Jacob did not know who he was until this man wrestled with him. And this man told him who he really is. This is not your identity. Your identity is a prince with God. Wow. Israel really, the name Israel really has three meanings to it. One who struggled with God and prevailed. The second one is may God, El, preserve. May El preserve. And the third one is prince with God. But may God, or may El, talking about Elohim, may he preserve you. May he unleash his unimaginable creative power in your life and transform everything about you. And that's what he did. You're not a crook. You're a prince with God. The man that wrestled with him gave him his identity. And from that moment forward, he started walking in that new man. Have you discovered who you really are? Or are you operating on the name that your family gave you? It was a family member that said you won't ever be nothing. It was somebody you had confidence in that told you you can't. You were born for this battle. Born to win. And that's what the Lord is trying. He wants this in all of us to understand. You're born for battle. He knows it. And that's what he's ready to equip you for. Not be religious, but for battle. But to be equipped for this battle, you cannot be out of place. Don't become like many saints now. We run and do whatever we want to do, and we want God to bless it. You're out of order. This battle requires us to be totally submitted to the King. Are y'all receiving this? Say, I was born for battle. And give the Lord a hand of praise.